Hello friends, in this video we will be learning the remaining rules of root locus. Let us begin. In previous videos we have seen up to rule 6. Let us start with rule 7. Rule number 7 is to calculate the breakpoint. So let us understand what is meant by a breakpoint. Actually speaking, this breakpoint can be classified into two categories, that is a breakaway point and break-in point. Let us understand what does that mean with a small example. Let us understand we have pole at -1, pole at -2, and let's say there is one 0 present at -3. Before we start discussing about breakaway or break-in point, that is in general break point, let us first of all decide where on the real axis root locus is present. For example, by the same theory, the root locus is present between these two poles, and then the root locus is present from -3 to -infinity. I hope you get my point. This is something which we have already discussed, so I'm not again going into detail. So what happens in the root locus is the pole at -2 starts traveling towards its right, and pole at -1 starts traveling towards left. So what happens at a particular value of k, both the poles may collide each other. Once they collide, what happens that they leave the real axis, that is one of the pole leaves real axis in this direction and the other pole leaves the real axis in this direction. So like that we get this kind of pole. So this definitely it is happening that a particular point on real axis they are leaving the root locus, or I would say the root locus at a particular point on real axis it is leaving. So that particular point on real axis is called as a break point. So this point is called as a break point, and since it is actually breaking away, then I can categorize that break point as breakaway point. So this is what we called as a breakaway point. I hope you get my point. So this example we have already seen in the last video. So you know that this pole starts departing in this direction. And don't forget, the root locus is always symmetrical with respect to real axis. So whatever happens above real axis, the same thing is going to happen even below this real axis. So as you can see now, at a particular point, these poles enters into the real axis. Okay, previously it was leaving the real axis, now it is breaking inside this real axis. So the point where it is entering into real axis again, that point is also called as a break-in point. So this is what we called as a break-in point. And rest of the theory, you know that one of the pole traveled towards infinity and the other pole gets terminated into this 0. So these are the situations where we have to calculate a breakaway point and the break-in point. In general, it is called as a break point. The reason why we call them as a break point, because to calculate the break point, we have got only common procedure. We don't have to calculate breakaway point separately and break-in point separately. What equation that we have in general in our hand is this, that is 1 plus k times you have a numerator polynomial of s upon denominator polynomial of s that is equated to 0. Just do this procedure, that is differentiate k with respect to s. So dk by ds just equated to 0. Once you do that, you will get some values of s1, s2, s3, s4 and so on. So you may get multiple points, that depends upon the degree of equation. If it is a second order, you may get 2 points, or let us assume hypothetically, let's say I'm getting s1, s2 and s3. So I'm not getting s4 in my case. Okay, so in my case, let us say I'm getting s1 value as -1.5, I'm getting s2 value as -2.5 and s3 value as -3.5. But in spite of getting 3 points, that is first point, second point and third point, you should be aware In this problem, we require only 2 points. That is, one point is a breakaway point, the other one is called as a break-in point. So out of three, you have to invalidate one of the point. So how you can validate or invalidate the points, that depends upon the values. Use your brains. Check it out. If you want a breakaway point, please refer to our example that breakaway point must be a value between -1 and -2. Therefore, I can now decide, after comparing -1.5, -2.5 and -3.5, you can conclude that S1 point that you have got is a valid breakaway point. So this is, I can consider as a breakaway point. So out of two breakpoints, I got one valid breakaway point. The second point that need is a break-in point. Okay. The second point that I need is a break-in point. So choose a valid break-in point out of -2.5 and -3.5. Observe carefully. Can't you see in the graphical representation that it should be more negative than -3? Meaning that S3 I can consider as a valid break-in point. Can I say in that case S2 is discarded? S2 is discarded or invalidated. So -2.5 cannot be a break-in or breakaway point because that is not a point on root locus. As you can see, between -2 to -3, it is nothing but NRL area, that is not on root locus area. So definitely -2.5 is the invalid answer. I hope you have understood it very well, rule number 7. Let's move to the next rule, that is rule number 8. So what rule number 8 is about? Rule number 8 is to calculate intersection of root locus branch on j omega axis. Let's see. So what is meant by that? I'll tell you. As you are aware that root locus is nothing but the journey of poles. Imagine a particular situation where our poles are moving from left half to right half of S-plane. I repeat, imagine a situation. It doesn't happen every time, okay? It is just an imaginary situation. Hypothetically, let me say that my poles are traveling from left to right, that is from left half of S-plane to right half of S-plane. So when your poles are moving or departing from left half of S-plane to right half of S-plane, they will definitely cross the j omega axis. And if yes, if they are crossing j omega axis, they will definitely cross at a particular point. So let me show you that case. So assume this is S-plane, where this is sigma, this is j omega axis, we have 0 here. And assume that we have got a root locus like this, where let's say poles are moving in this direction, and since it is symmetrical to real axis, as you can see, whatever happening above real axis, the same things are even happening below real axis also. So as you can see, at 2 points it is crossing j omega axis. Am I right? So this rule 8 is telling you how to calculate those intersection points of root locus branch on j omega axis. Let me tell you, it doesn't happen in every problem, but wherever you observe this, you have to follow with rule 8. I hope you understood that. So how to get that? Okay, again, use the common sense. In fact, basically these are something journey of poles, meaning that you're getting poles on j omega axis. Whenever you get poles on j omega axis, so it is easy to get by using the root Hurwitz criteria. How to get this? Use root Hurwitz criteria. That is by forming root Hurwitz array. So once you form that array, do you remember? I'm sure you must have watched my videos in root Hurwitz array. In that series of videos, at a particular video, I have told you where do you get poles on j omega axis. Okay, so try to recollect that. When and in which case do I get my poles on j omega axis? If you remember, it was special case 2. Special case 2, where in my root array, a particular row becomes all 0 row. From that, you get something called as an auxiliary equation. So Using Ruth Hurwitz criteria, what you should do that you should apply special case 2. Okay, so by using special case 2, because I told you clearly, only in special case 2 of the Root Hurwitz criteria you will get poles on j omega axis. Here I must get my poles on j omega axis because I want an intersection of that root locus branch on j omega axis, and obviously that branch is nothing but, they are footprints of the poles. They are footprints of the poles. So definitely at particular point the pole comes on j omega axis, and I want to find those poles, and it is possible by applying a special case 2, that is in Root Hurwitz criteria. Once you do that, get auxiliary equation and just equate it to 0. Once you equate that auxiliary equation to 0, okay, get the roots. And these roots are nothing but an intersection point on j omega axis, right? Those roots are nothing but an intersection on j omega axis. For example, hypothetically I am saying those roots are, let's say, plus minus 2j. Then I mean to say that 2j is the point of intersection where my root locus branch is crossing positive j omega axis, and minus 2j is the intersection point for the root locus which is crossing the minus j omega axis. I hope you get my point. So in this rule 8, if you want to get an intersection point of root locus branch on j omega axis, the only process to do this, use a Root Hurwitz criteria, apply special case 2, get auxiliary equation, equate it to 0, and solve that auxiliary equation and get the roots. Those roots are nothing but an intersection point. I'm sure you understood this, and if not, you need not to worry. Just take it as a rule. We will solve one problem where we will be using all the rules. In fact, I'll be trying to take a problem where I can apply most of the rules in a single problem. Let's see. Let's go to the another rule, that is rule number 9. Rule number 9 is to calculate angle of approach and angle of departure. Let us denote this one as theta A. Don't make it phi A, because phi A is something that we were using for angle of asymptotes. So I'm using over here theta A. That is nothing but angle of approach, and angle of departure, let me use theta D. So theta A and theta D calculations we need to do. Let us understand in which cases we do require angle of approach and angle of departure. First of all, rule number 9 is applicable only and only when you have complex conjugate poles or complex conjugate zeros in your system. So let me write that. So let me tell you, for complex conjugate poles, you need to calculate angle of departure, that is theta D. And for complex conjugate zeros, you have to calculate theta A, that is angle of approach. So what is angle of approach? What is angle of departure? Let us understand with a small example, and of course we will understand it along with the formulas. First of all, we will understand angle of departure concept. For that, of course, if it is regarding phi d or theta d, let me say, then complex conjugate poles are necessary. So let us assume complex conjugate poles like this. Let us say we have one more pole here and we have one more zero here. That is after the pole. Let me draw it. So what I need to do is I need to actually calculate something called as angle of departure here. Why angle of departure is necessary? Let us understand this. See, first of all, I know that root locus always starts with a pole. Am I right? So root locus may start with this pole in this direction, or maybe in this direction, or in this direction. I don't know at what angle, listen to me very carefully, at what angle this root locus starts from this pole. Because the problem is these roots are in the air, and I have to find a root locus starting point, okay, or how my root locus is originating. So far what used to happen, let me tell you guys, we used to have poles on real axis. So we knew that even though the root locus starts from the pole, it will be on real axis only. So we weren't, so we were least interested to even know at what angle it is departing. But when it comes to a complex conjugate poles, let me repeat my statement. When it comes to a complex conjugate poles, please understand my poles are in the air. If it is in the air, even my root locus starts in the air. So whenever you are starting your root locus from a pole, from which direction it is originating with respect to pole, that angle should be known, that is called as angle of departure. So let me show you once again. For example, let us say the angle of departure is, for example, 135 degree. Then what I'll do is I'll take an angle of 135 degree here, and I will show that my root locus is leaving this pole with this angle, that is 135 degree angle. I hope you understand that. So since you know that actually your root locus is always symmetrical with respect to real axis, so whatever happens above real axis, the same thing happens at below real axis also. So with the same angle, even the root locus departs with this angle. I hope you understand. So there we need something called as phi d or theta d, that is nothing but angle of departure. Let us understand how this angle of departure is even calculated, okay? So I'll just copy this pole zero plot to the right hand side so as to show you the calculation. So for example, if I'm calculating my angle of departure for pole 1, how to get it? See carefully. Let me mark the other pole, that is pole number 2. Let me mark another pole, that is pole number 3. And let me mark this 0 with 0, 1, for example. Now what you do, first of all decide you are going to calculate angle of departure for pole 1 or pole 2. You have to calculate for either of the pole, because you know that one angle of departure is known to you, similar angle in a negative scale you have to take for the pole which is present downward. So let us select pole 1. I want to calculate the angle of departure for pole 1, let's say. So what I'm going to do, since pole 1 departure angle if I want to calculate, I will join the other poles and zeros to pole 1. I'll join pole 2 with pole 1. Also I will join the 0 with that pole 1. And once I do that, I will now take those angles, like let us assume this angle is theta 1. Let us assume this angle is theta 2. Let us assume this angle is theta 3. Okay, so you got to know the various theta angle made by the other poles and zeros with respect to real axis. Now what am I supposed to do? I am going to apply one formula to calculate something called as theta d. Please remember, this is what we called as theta d. How to calculate theta d? Very simple. See, it has got a predefined formula. Please understand. Theta d is always, it is 180 degree. It is 180 degree. Okay, minus summation of angles made by poles plus summation of angles made by zeros. Okay, so let us apply this formula over here and let us calculate theta d here. Look at this, it is 180 degree minus. Okay, now what we have to do, we have to take summation of angles made by poles. So as you can see, other than pole 1 there is pole 2 and pole 3, okay, whose angle summation I can take theta 1 plus theta 2. So in the bracket I can write theta 1 plus theta, then we have plus here, then I'll make it plus, and then in the bracket you have to write the summation of angles made by zeros. But then we have got only one zero, so I'll include only theta 3. Let us say if we had theta 4, that is angle made by 0, so we would have written theta 3 plus theta 4 here. So that's it. This is the simple formula to get theta d, that is nothing but angle of departure. I hope you understood this. Okay, so I'll just give you one trick to remember this formula. So 180 minus, since you are calculating for D, that is D stands for what? Departure. So when you are calculating for departure, departure is always with respect to the complex conjugate pole. So basically you are calculating it for poles. So the similar angles, the similar angle means what? Angle made by poles, because you are calculating for poles, and if you are taking summation of angle made by poles, always subtract it and add with the opposite one. Opposite one means you are calculating departure angle for poles, but the summation of angles, if you are summing it for zeros, then just add it. So for same kind of pole you subtract, and for same, or I would say opposite kind of zeros, you basically add. I hope you understand that. So this is how you calculate theta D. Let us calculate for theta A, that is nothing but angle of approach. So where do I need angle of approach? Let us see, when we have complex conjugate zeros. Then let's say I have one pole here, I have one zero here. Pay attention. So you know very well, these are zeros. Let me say this is 0, 1, and let me say this is 0, 2. Let me say this is 0, 3. Let me say this is pole number 1. Now try to understand my point. With respect to 0, when you talk about root locus always terminates into 0. Terminates into 0 means definitely some root locus will come and will get into this 0. Some root locus will come and will get into this 0. Okay, so whatever structure that you are drawing above real axis, the similar structure you should draw below real axis, because again you know the fact that the root locus is always symmetrical with respect to real axis. Yes or no? So if it is entering into this 0, you should actually know at which angle theta A it is entering. At which angle it is entering, you should know that. So our aim is to calculate theta A now. So what I'll do, I'll just draw again a similar structure here, and I'll tell you graphically how to calculate it. So what we had two zeros which were complex conjugate. We had one pole here, we had one zero here. Fine. So for example, if I'm calculating it for Z1, then what you do? From Z2, from Z3, and from P1, join with respect to Z1. So I'm going to join Z2 to Z1. Then I'm going to join my P1 to Z1. And I'm going to join Z3 to Z1. And of course you have to record, that is nothing but, let's say this is theta 1, let me say this is theta 2, and let me say this is theta 3. Fine. Now let us calculate theta A. So you have to calculate it either for Z1 or Z2. Fine. So for theta A, I can write it is nothing but 180 minus summation of angles made by zeros. If you see, it is exactly complement of the previous formula. In the previous formula, it was plus summation of angle made by zeros. Now it is minus over here. In the previous formula, it was plus summation of angle made by poles. Here, it would be plus summation of angle made by poles. In the previous formula, it was minus. So let me write theta A equal to, it is 180 minus. So in the first bracket, you have to mention the summation of all angles made by zeros. Since other than Z1, we have Z2 and Z3. So what I'm going to do over here, I'm going to add theta 1 with theta 3. And then I'm going to add with the angle which is made by poles. So we have got only one pole here. So let me write only plus theta 2. This is the way we calculate angle of arrival. I hope you understood. This is also called as angle of arrival or angle of approach. So these are the rules. I would request even to watch this video as well as the previous video again, so that you become very well familiarized with all root locus rules to be followed. And once you are thorough about it, then only start with the next lecture, where we are actually going to start with the problem. Thank you.